Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Maika Sivo! Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell Gillard!
Hello and welcome back to our second Instant Reaction podcast of the 2024 season. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020. Joining me to break down all of the action out of North Ipswich Reserve is my good mate, Sixties. Big fella, Eels on show for the second time in 2 weeks in the preseason, and it's fair to say they got more right than they got wrong this week, as opposed to what we saw against the Raiders in week one.
Well, mate, it's only a trial, but I enjoy talking about a win far more than I do talking about a loss.
Ain't that the truth?
We're off to a positive start there.
Yes, sir. And it was, we'll get into the breakdown quickly, but obviously torrid conditions up there, 29 pushing 30 with 80% humidity. Not too dissimilar from what we saw at Cogra, actually. So it's been a real challenging preseason across those two trial matches for the Eels. But as I alluded to, before we get into that, we have a quick shout out for the sponsors of the show, as we always do. Big Swing Golf, North Mead, and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan, and Parramatta, helping us get out each and every episode. All right, big fella. Eels 26, Titans 16, up at North Ipswich Reserve. For the Titans, Philip Sami, AJ Brimson on that scoop and score, Alafiana Camperera and Jojo Fafita scoring. They couldn't kick a goal to save themselves. For the Blue and Gold, Will Pennicini opened the scoring after a lovely bit of work from Bryce Cartwright. Maika Sivo, Reagan Campbell-Gillard, Bryce Cartwright and Jermaine Hopgood all scoring within 46 minutes. Moses 3 from 5 off the tee. Yeah, a nice score there for the Eels. Probably reflective of how well they played. I know the Titans lodged 2 tries in the end when both teams sort of run out their mixed lists and brought in some of the reserve grade troops. But for the Eels, they were slightly ahead on possession, 51 to 49%. Marginally had on time possession based on that as well. Only completed at 68%, 30 of 44, which obviously not what you want to see, but I think those errors piled up in the second half in particular. Titans were very efficient, at 88%, but the Eels dominated most of the attacking stats, well ahead on runs and run meters, on post-contact meters. Both teams at 4 line breaks apiece. The Titans actually broke more tackles, which is interesting because I didn't think the Eels were that bad defensively in this game. Titans with a way faster play of the ball, 291 to 373. Eels outloaded the pants off the Titans, 18-4. Were pretty neat in the kick defusals, 86%, which is good to see. I think that must have been the Sivo strip would just about be the only one that was deemed a non-catch then. And then, yeah, looking at the defensive rates of both teams, Titans 88.66% effective tackle rate, Eels 87.28. So like I said, didn't feel like the Titans broke that many tackles, but they've, apparently they did. Eels made 12 mistakes. They got Titans 6, which plays into those completion rates. And then in terms of key performers, 60s on the stat sheet, good day for Guffo. Will Pennicini was outstanding, 162 metres from 13 carries, and he looked like an absolute load every time he was carrying the ball down that right edge. Sean Russell, Reagan Campbell-Gillard, Junior Barlaw, Sean Lane are all busy. Jermaine Hopgood, 226 metres from 21 carries, plus a stack of tackles too. So he had a huge game there. Then off the interchange, Ogden started. He got over 100 metres, and Makatoa had 155 metres to his name. So plenty of offensive workload there. If I quickly look at the people who made the tackles. And then it was actually a pretty even split. Joey Lussick looks like Jermaine Hopwood led the team with 31 tackles, but Ogden 29, Reg 23, Lane 22, Cartwright 21, Hands 20, Tuolungi 21. So it's pretty even split across the forwards there, 60s. That's the tale of the tape. What do you want to talk about at the start of this game?
Well, look, I think first of all, the Eels seem to have the majority of the crowd there. I don't know if you caught the any of the time the camera was panning, looking at the players on the bench, and you catch the crowd in the background, or when it was in the footage where you got to see some of the crowd. Gee, the blue and gold, I mean the real blue and gold, not the Titans blue and yellow, but the blue and gold seemed to well and truly outweigh the Titans supporters for a match up in Queensland. It just goes to show we've known for a long time that the Eels have a massive supporter base up north of the border, and I think that showed today in the crowd that turned up to cheer on the Eels in this trial match. Secondly, the other thing that caught my eye was just the strength of our team when we had our starters out there. Now, let's just mention straight off the bat that there were players that were missing from the list to go up there. So we had Joe Ofahengaue was missing. I think it was known before the game that there was a death in the family and he travelled back to New Zealand from that. It was announced during the game that Ryan Matterson had a bit of a back problem, so he sat out the game. I think Woody had a bit of a late issue, so he was missing. I mean, you've basically got three starters there who didn't participate in the game, and that also impacted what would be quite a lot of rotations in a game like this, in a trial like this. So the players probably had to play some extra minutes than what they would have planned. But I did like the fact that BA got our halves off the field and Gutho off the field towards the end, because you just don't want to risk having any of them missing for round one. And as we said in the preview this week, what was the main thing that we were looking for was for the team to come through unscathed and have everyone available for round one.
Yeah, the only real concern coming into this game was Bailey Simonsson, who left the field. What I would have deemed to be a pretty fair juncture for Morgan Harper to be thrown into the fray anyway, but he left the field under his own power and seemed to walk into the stands to be assessed for a minor knock. So got to wait and see what happens there. And the only other concern would be Maika Sivo for potential high contact on AJ Brimson, although I struggle to see why he would have still been on the field if it was a high shot, because we've seen that be minimum sin bin and quite often a send-off if it is a high contact in that situation. So I have to wait and see what the MRC has to say. But yeah, they're the only two real concerns to the Eels coming out of this one. In terms of what we saw, 60s, I mean, I know that the completion rate crept down below where we wanted to see that. We established, I think, 75% as the sort of break-even threshold for what we deem to be a good efficiency. But you got to say that the actual effort, the intent, the contact, it was a night and day difference from what we saw last week against the Raiders.
Oh, yes. Look, it absolutely was. If I was to narrow down any criticisms that I had from today, and bear in mind it's a trial, it is, first of all, that completion rate, and secondly, some issues over there on Sivo's wing. I didn't think Maika had the greatest trial today.
No.
Defensively, he didn't make some good decisions.
I like the effort rucking the ball out. I think that was closer to where we wanted him to be at last year.
Absolutely agree. Yep.
But there was some clear lack of polish in other areas, and whether it was racing out for to create the first try for the Titans, or just a couple of lapses under the high ball and in defence, he's got some work to do in with the 2 weeks we've got to round one now. Yeah.
So, but again, this is me looking for something to take issue with in what was a trial. Now, I'm sure that there are people out there that are going to draw that into being Eels continuing to have an issue out wide defensively. I would say in that with Sivo, I mean, it looked to me like he fell out of the system in that first try, the way that he just charged away from Simonsson, like where the team was looking to slide across, he went charging up, and it just left a huge gaping hole.
Mm-hmm.
The other issue where Khan Pereira got past Sean Russell, that was really a case where maybe Sean should have committed a little bit earlier, or looked to take him a little bit earlier.
And there were two forward passes in the movement. So
don't even get me started on the forward passes, because if I go back to the first half, the pass from Joey Lussick that was called forward, and it was a line ball, right? But if you're going to call that forward, you've got 5,000 more similar calls to make this season. In all seriousness, like that was, you are going to see so many passes from dummy half that are going to be far worse than that. So when the touchy called that as being forward, it was almost laughable, but probably more laughable because of the fact that we know how many are going to be missed throughout the season proper. Look, I don't want to dwell too much on a simple call like that was pretty tough, but it's. I just hope that we see consistency this year, and I know we won't. So
No, we won't. But in terms of the rule 60s, we saw the Eels making good adjustments to the downtown rule. They didn't give away a penalty, and given that Mitchell Moses likes to strike it from deeper inside, from deeper behind the ruck than most halves, I thought he also moved around a little bit to create different timings on the release point of his kicks, and the Eels did a great job accommodating that, which is good to see. I think the Eels end up winning the ruck battle in terms of the calls, but I could be wrong about that. We were up in the 6 again calls at one point. Where are the errors? Ruck infringements, the Gold Coast gave away 5 to Parramatta's 2, and it was 5 apiece in terms of the penalties. So it was good to see the Eels being... It's nice to see the dominance in the ruck reflected in the calls, which we don't always see for Parramatta, despite being a superior ruck team to a lot of the squads going around in recent years. Didn't always get the calls, so it was good to see that today. Look, team-wide 60s, I thought it was a pretty good effort. I think we showed a nice mix of structured and unstructured play. We got to see the genius of Bryce Cartwright very early on, running like an absolute maniac and then offloading to Will Penasini, who scored a nice try. Then you got to see the genius of Mitch Moses down the right edge short side of that kick back to Bryce Cartwright. So got to see the team playing in and out of structure really nicely. I thought the Jermaine Hopgood trial was a fantastic team effort. I was actually talking to my brother, and it wasn't just on that particular play, but a couple other times, it looked like Quentin Guffison's done a bit of studying on Nathan Cleary. The way he structured that build-up with the sort of inside show or inside shape to the outside, inside pass back to the outside, to the open side, it's really similar to what Cleary does at Penrith, and it led to some nice plays there, so it was good to see. The Eels looked like... they didn't look like... I know it was a vastly different team, which needs to be said, but they looked nothing like what we saw last week. This really was the trial they obviously had circled and were willing to put their proper efforts into, which is fair enough, the way the preseason works. And from a team perspective, I was quite happy.
Yeah, look, I was happy too, because we didn't see much more than basic attacking shapes mixed in with the unstructured footy.
No, but we got to see good kicks from Dylan Brown and Mitchell Moses. Got to see the dummy halves getting involved in that regard too. So it was just like enough of a mix-up there to show that this team can attack from different points pretty freely.
Yeah,
and
there was no special plays that they would have worked on during the pre-season. It was, as has been predicted, it was just, not too many shots that were fired, but the team does like to, as you spoke about before, get into the unstructured football. The number of offloads were right up there with what we'd expect from the Eels in each and every round of football that they play in. And I guess to the large extent, the offloads found their mark, especially Bryce Cartwright.
Bryce looked fantastic out there, and he was very aggressive in defence as well. And it looks like, he had a good game last week, but it seems like Kelma Tuolangi has really embraced the ability to offload and create some of that ad-lib football. So it's good to see. And he was very unlucky not to score a great individual try late in the game. He just couldn't get the ball down off that leg. Did everything he could but get it down by about half a centimetre, I reckon. Didn't mind seeing what we saw from Kelma there. You go for that team list, and there was a lot of guys that had very good games. Guffo, Will Penasini was a bull in a china shop down the right edge. He looks phenomenal.
I was so impressed with him during the preseason that he's obviously really added some muscle to his frame. He was always a handful for defenders before, but he seems to have extra power in his game this season. Maybe even looks a little bit faster.
Yes,
as well.
yeah. He just every time he looked like he not just a better tackle, but bust the line open every time he got the ball. And we know that he and Sean Russell have a good connection, so we'll see more of that throughout the season. But that whole right edge looked dynamic from Moses to Cartwright, then to the two outside backs. So very, very good signs there.
What about the workhorse that was Jermaine
Oh
Hopgood?
yeah,
You know,
he
226 run meters, 31 tackles.
just the one missed, and
Just the
then
one missed.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then there's a stack of periphery stats, including some offloads, of which he had, I think, 3, including a number of line engagements too. He had 7 dummy passes going into the line, so he was mixing up his looks offensively. He wasn't just being a one-trick pony and being a pivot or just carrying the ball. So, you know, he's a very important fulcrum for this team. And he was also doing that role with no Ryan Matterson to work in relief, who is really, you know, the two I see in that regard, to playing as the middle ball-playing half. So very good stuff from Jermaine Hopgood. He scored that really nice try where I think I saw one of his teammates gassing him up about the run. But he was sucking in the big ones throughout that game, and it was no surprise because the conditions were brutal. And yet he still didn't, you know, make any bad mistakes. Great to see. I said in the preview podcast, 60s, I wanted to see the forwards working in pods, hunting as a pack, and we definitely saw that today. We saw the big men sort of interchanging the ball, linking up around the middle, especially in the red zone. It's what led to Junior and Reagan Campbell-Gillard combining for that great try under the posts. There were a couple of opportunities too where Junior might have just overplayed his hand, but I don't mind that in a trial. You want to see that and get those timings right. And when they're sort of working together like that, they are so hard to stop.
Yeah, the Eels must take advantage of the forwards that they have. Now, there will be people out there who wrongly criticise the mantra that BA has with his team, which is chase the collision. I don't know why people would criticise that mantra, because if you've got a pack like the Eels have got, you're going to take advantage of it. But not only that, the whole essence of rugby league is to win the middle. If you don't have forwards who are going to chase the collision, you're not going to win games of rugby league. So anyone that wants to tell you or wants to laugh at phrases like chase the collision, laugh at them, because I don't think they've got any idea about rugby league. The forwards that the Eels have are basically a premiership winning pack. Now, whether they can play off them, whether we've got the outside backs that can do the job on top of that, remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's a lot that goes into a season, and I am in no way declaring that the Eels are going to win the title, because just as anyone can have hopes, you can find those hopes shattered with loss of form, injury, suspension, a whole bad calls. A whole lot of things can go into a season. We saw how bad a season can get last year, for example. But as far as the Eels are concerned, the real strength lies there. Plus, we've probably got the fastest halves combination in the NRL in Moses and Brown, and Mr. Consistency at fullback. So it's a matter now of if the outside backs can stay healthy and get the job done, then you'd like to think that the Eels will be heading back to a finals campaign this year. I'm not getting carried away from a trial. This is what I've said all along about who the Eels have in their roster. Now, have they got an X factor that some teams have? Possibly not. I mean, Dylan Brown could be that X factor.
Mm-hmm.
He could always be that X factor. But the biggest criticism of the Eels, and I've been one of them, has been that we haven't recruited depth for the outside backs, or we haven't spent money on an X factor. It's not going to happen this year. Whether that means that the Eels can't match it with the teams that will feature at the top of the table throughout the season remains to be seen. But I like the I like the top 17 and even a bit below the
Oh,
top
but
seven.
there's clearly some riches and depth in the forwards.
Yeah.
You mentioned in the preamble about who wasn't available in this game. No Joe Ofahengaue, no Wiremu Greig, no Ryan Matterson. On top of the likes of Luca Moretti, who we saw have a really strong start to their NRL career last year. There's some legitimate, quality of depth for the Eels in that regard. I mean, Matt Doorey, we saw Ogden have a pretty good game today. Makatoa was pretty solid as well. So they've got a good amount of depth there. It's like you said, in the back line where we really need that top back line to stay healthy, because Morgan Harper, he looked fine. I thought he was, again, solid in the time he got today. So
not too many opportunities.
No, but
in his way, but he did what he needed to do when the came his way.
Exactly. So I'm fairly confident that Harper would come in and do a pretty solid job in the regular season. But after Morgan, and then you got Hayes as the backup winger, it gets very skinny very fast. We saw Blaze Talangi get a few minutes in this game, and I thought it was only one moment, but it was a nice little bit of redemption from last week where the footsteps were coming again with the high ball, but this time he left the ground and took a great catch that segued into a penalty for being taken in the air, so that was nice to see. But, yeah, we are thin in the outside backs, there's no doubting that. And that's where you always need luck to win a premiership. And for the Eels, they're definitely going to need a healthy back line. And in that back line, they're going to need Maika Sivo and Sean Russell and Bailey Simonsson, I think, to all find, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% more, or even more if they can, from what we saw last year. Because the two players that I'm confident from in the back line to be really productive pieces in a push for the premiership are both Gufferson and Penasini. I think that they're both showing their class year in and year out now.
So what was the word on Simonsson's injury? We had there was the HIA that he was looked at, but there was also a hamstring, bit of a twinge with the hamstring.
I think that's what they said is the update came through. But he was walking with a pretty free motion, and when you've got a dodgy hemi, you usually see him immediately grab for it and then leave that leg as straight as possible when walking. So have to wait and see if there's anything to it. He does have the benefit of it being 2 weeks to the Saturday game against the Bulldogs, or a tick under 2 weeks because obviously today is a Sunday. So if it is a minor hamstring injury, then he can race the clock in that regard. But if he's touch and go, then I think you just put Morgan Harper in and let Simonsson recuperate without risk of exacerbating an injury if it is there.
So as far as the round one selections, I guess taking into account the players that weren't able to play, do you put all three of those into the 17?
That bench, it's going to cause some issues in a good way. I don't know. I don't know how you pick that bench. I think Brendan Hands probably wins that 14 spot. And from today, the fact that we didn't see Ofahengaue, Woody, or Maddo just complicates things that much more, doesn't it? No one got a chance to press a claim or shoo away the contenders. Like I said, I was
just going to say we did see Brendan Hands being used in the halves.
That's right, which again points towards the fact that Brad Arthur doesn't want him there as a pure dummy half interchange piece, and his ability to cover the halves or even a small ball lock forward and then facilitate changes elsewhere. A big feather in his cap. I think he'll be there round one. I think Lussick is a good dummy half, but there'll be games where the defensive workload gets to him and you want that rotational dummy half to come in and go a bit up tempo or share the load. And there'll be games where, there's a HIA against Dylan or Moses or, something goes wrong for one of them and you need the ability to facilitate a reshuffle in the halves. Hands obviously fantastic there. So, yeah, I think Hands is a shoe-in for round one. After that, we just didn't get to see the contenders today, which makes it that much more difficult. I do have a question for you that sort of goes towards team construction, not necessarily those three players directly, but two games in a row now, given that it was last year against the Panthers and then now the proper NRL preseason trial, seeing Junior Barlow coming off the interchange to start a game. Do you think that's a trend towards a new role for Junior, where he can absolutely be a weapon coming in against the more fatigued pack, or is that just a case of we didn't have those players today, so let's make that reshuffle happen and sort of it's the best hand from the deck of cards we got dealt?
I don't think you could ignore the fact that this move must be at the forefront of Brad Arthur's thinking.
I don't mind it. I feel like obviously Junior and Reg at the peak of their powers were a formidable duo, but you know they're not. It's not the twilight years of their careers, right? But they're not at their physical prime anymore. So moving them towards roles they can be more effective isn't the worst idea.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And it could be something where we've talked about this before, but it becomes a horses for courses. Like there might be certain opponents where BA decides that he wants to bring Junior off the bench. Who knows? There might be certain opponents where he decides he wants to bring Reg off the bench. And I don't think there's anything wrong with mixing up having one of those players so that, like there's starting times, so that there's one of those players out on the field for most of the game. Like that for most of the game, we've got one of them.
One of the core middles on the field, exactly.
Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't want to have both of them out there together, because we saw what happened today when Junior was able to link with Reg for that try under the post. And the way they linked, it almost looked like it was unstoppable. Like from the moment that Junior received and started running at the line. And let's face it, the Gold Coast Titans defence was extremely passive there. So it made it look even more unstoppable for the Eels there. But look, I think it is possible that BA might go that way, but I also think it's possible that it's something that might change from week to week. So it is a nice little teaser about his team selections or his decision making about the starting lineup going into round one. But like you, I think it does make things really interesting, the fact that those three players didn't participate in this game. And then you have to think, well, will any of them be really underdone by not participating in this game? Woody got a bit of a run last week.
Woody and Matterson had the benefit of playing last week, exactly. So that'll serve them well. But we also know that Joe had a phenomenal preseason in terms of his conditioning, so it's not like he's going to be... I know that game fitness is also its own thing, but given the other forwards we have, you could ease him into a contest on a minutes restriction if that is required based on a lack of match fitness. So, yeah, interesting to see where BA goes Tuesday week when TLT gets dropped for the Parramatta Eels in round one. Lots of questions still to be answered by the virtue of the fact we didn't see those three forwards this week, but I find myself feeling, you never come out of a trial, or you should never come out of a trial feeling, unreasonably confident about how your team's going to perform because they dominated or the opposition looked terrible. But I do feel like the Eels addressed a lot of our key concerns, 60s. Outside of the completion rate, that's probably the big one there. But I think that the physicality we saw in defense was very encouraging. I know a bit
better line speed.
The line speed was definitely up from last week. I know the Titans scored a few tries, obviously the last two against the mixed up teams there, but they only made, it felt like they only had control of the ruck at one period, and that was late in the first half where there was a couple of dummy half scoots that had a bit of impetus there. But in general, we dominated in the middle, which is what you want to see from a team like the Eels, where we're built to do that. We saw Mitchell Moses look really sharp. Dylan probably could have used a little bit more ball, but I thought that he kicked well in the responsibilities he had there. Just across the park, it was a nice showing. Yes, there were some errors. Yes, a couple of players like Maika Sivo had mixed outings, and they're going to need to address that in the run to round one. But on the balance of things, I thought that was a good trial. We got out relatively unscathed, pending what the MRC says about the Sivo hit on Brimson and what we get with Bailey Simonsson and a potential hamstring tweak. So that's pretty much as nice a trial as you can get, honestly speaking.
Yeah, and really, the tries that the Eels scored, they were good. They were good quality.
Yes,
really were.
Yeah,
so
they weren't cheapies. They had some really fluent ball movement there. Whether it was the Cartwright offload, the Mitchell Moses grubber kick, the whole, right edge and ruck combining for Jermaine Hopgood, or the two forwards combining for Regan Campbell Gillard. So really good stuff. And then you look at the tries that we conceded. The Philip Sami try, well, obviously we talked about Maika shooting out and the Titans playing that well, but the Brimson try was just a scoop and score. He went 95 or 90 metres because the Eels are committed to attacking, and that sometimes happens. Khan Pereira, well, there were two forward passes, including the touchy standing right in front of the first one. And then the Joe Ofahengaue try was off the kick, wasn't it, at the end? So that was actually a well-worked try from the Titans. So I come out of that thinking that the defence was, on the whole, pretty solid. It wasn't, perfect or dominant, but there were some really good hits. Guys like Bryce Cartwright, who we saw last year, take a big step forwards defensively. He was leading the way again today. So that's what you want to see. And yeah, I sort of moved towards round one now, feeling like we're in a good position to build against the Bulldogs. And make a nice start to the 2024 campaign, knock on wood.
Let's go to the 3-2-1 for this trial, seeing as though we had just about the starting 13, or very close to the starting 13 there, and also because it was a victory as well, so that makes it even sweeter to do. So, we'll go with a 3-2-1. Mate, I don't think. Well, look, for me, it's a bit of a toss-up between Mitch Moses and Jermaine Hopgood for the 3. Look, given the workload that he did
in the conditions,
the conditions, I'll give the 3 points to Hopgood, just edging out Moses for 2, and I'll give 1 point to Bryce Cartwright as well for a really solid performance, and I think he's probably moved to the point of being the number one back rower at this point.
What a narrative arc for Bryce Cartwright, hey? From on the trash heap in the NRL to going down as a very, very good Eel in his career. So well done to Bryce for putting in the hard yards under Brad Arthur.
And let me stipulate there, he's got that my nod as the number one back rower at the club, not because of any lack of form of Sean Lane, but really Sean just had 12 months where we didn't get him on the paddock last year.
Miserable.
And Bryce had a really good year, and he's continuing that really good year into this preseason. And we're just seeing flashes of Sean Lane in the preseason, and that may well be that I change my ratings there, but I can't go past what Bryce Cartwright is doing, and I'm gonna give myself a ticket here, because when the Eels signed him, I said that he would be a difference maker for the club, that he'd be a very good signing and be a difference maker for the club. And I think he justified the signing last year. Look, I thought he was a decent signing for 22.
Yeah,
but
I was going to say, he arguably justified it in 22, even though he was a bit streaky. Yeah. But 2023 was really the full realisation of what he could be as a footballer on both sides of the ball, and he looks set to build on that again in 24. So that is a very fair reflection on the effort individually as a footballer and the foundational trust and belief put in by the coaching staff. So
you're 3-2-1 now, mate.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be a cruel miser and dock Moses very harshly for the missed goals, because otherwise it'd be a similar 3-2-1. So I'm going to put him in the HMs because of that. Hopefully he doesn't listen and take it too seriously. He had a very good game, so he could have easily been in the points. I don't think you can go past Hopgood for the 3. We spoke at length about the conditions this week, and they were very challenging, and he just rolled his sleeves up and had a fantastic game. 2 points. 2 points. I will go Bryce Cartwright. I think he scored a try, set up a try, set the tone on defence, and had a number of great charges. My 1 point, though, goes to his compatriot on the right edge and Will Penasini. So it could have been another man in Mitchell Moses, obviously, but I really liked what I saw from Will. And there's also a HM to Quentin Gufferson too, who was very good. So don't want to miss out on the king there, but I thought that Penasini, I feel like he is slept on in the wider NRL community 60s. I know we talked about it, but all these other centres get a run for State of Origin and get their name put out there, and Will just goes out there and dominates every week on both sides of the ball. He's an outstanding defensive centre that is a wrecking ball with the ball in hand, and we see guys like Talakai get absolutely creamed over in the media because they can break a tackle, and yet Will sort of doesn't get his dues. So he looks primed for a huge year, and I really like the fact that we're looking to feed him the early ball down the right edge because the Titans did not have an answer for him.
I'm sure, like many other Eels supporters, I'm sure many other Eels supporters will agree with me. I'm happy for Will to fly under the radar.
I mean, selfishly, yes. Obviously, it means no State of Origin jerseys means more Eels jerseys, but you do want to see a Parramatta Eel get their dues.
Of course,
but but Will looked phenomenal, and there was a whole chunk of the team that had very good games today. And like I said, it's a really nice position to now springboard into round one. I think it's definitely assuaged as it washes away a lot of the issues that we had last week where we looked very shaky against the Canberra Raiders. And I know it was a much more of a reserve grade team, but just a reminder that the Eels are a pretty good team this week, which is nice.
Yeah. Now, just quickly, there were trial games up at Morrie Breen Reserve at Canwell up on the Central Coast today. The Eels Jersey Flag team defeated the Knights 18-14. I'm still waiting on a result from the New South Wales Cup trial between the Eels and the Knights. No real feedback in terms of score or who won. So as soon as we know that, we'll let it be known through socials. But yesterday, the Eels continued their undefeated run in the Harold Matthews competition, defeating the Illawarra Steelers. The SG Ball suffered their first loss of the season against the undefeated Steelers team. The Lisa Fia-Ola Cup team made it back-to-back when they defeated the Steelers, and the Steelers were undefeated in the Lisa Fia-Ola Cup. And unfortunately, things just aren't working out for the Tasha Gale girls. Again, too many errors this week, and they were really shut out badly, 38-0 against the Steelers in their match this weekend. So, look, the girls have done it tough because they've been on the road for every match. So they're yet to have a home game. They do get a home game this week. The boys, the mats are sitting now up near the very top of the table, and the SG Ball, well, that was just their first loss of the season, as I said, against the previously undefeated Steelers. And we'll talk more about the junior reps during the week, but it is a home game this week. Different opponents for the boys and the girls. I think the boys are playing the Bulldogs, the girls are playing the Dragons, I think, in both of their games. So if you want to get out to Eric Tweedale Stadium at Granville next Saturday, you'll be able to catch some junior reps. And what better weekend to do that than a weekend that is only has the round zero matches over in Las Vegas, so you can actually get out locally to watch Eels teams in action next Saturday afternoon, or morning and afternoon.
Yes, indeed.
So, mate, that just about wraps things up for our Instant Reaction podcast. As you said at the start of the pod, our thanks to our sponsors, Big Swing Golf, Northmead, and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan, and Parramatta. Thank you for tuning in and having a bit of a listen. We hope you enjoyed the Eels' victory today. It's always good to have a win. You can't help but enjoy that. John, thank you for a fine podcast. Thank you to all of our listeners. And as I always say, go you mighty Eels.